Honestly, I think coming to Rotman Commerce when I was in high school, I never took a business course. I knew I liked business. I knew I liked marketing. I thought business was a good way for me to combine my creativity and analytical brain together and problem solving into one degree. But like I said, never took a business course. I knew I was good at math, good at English and writing, and I liked chemistry and the
Three, two, one. Hey guys, welcome back to the Way podcast with your host Sajid Marwar. Today we have a very special guest, a fellow Rotman Commerce student and entrepreneur. Megan Chong has joined us today. Thank you for coming on.
Thanks for having me. I'm very excited to be here.
Of course, it's our pleasure to have you on the podcast. So today um, we're going to talk about an array of topics, but I guess we'll just start off with a basic introduction of yourself, Megan.
Awesome. Thanks, Sajin. So, also fellow Rotman Commerce student. I'm in my fourth year, just finishing up. I love to do a bunch of different things on and off campus. I am the founder and designer of UofMeg, which is my own e-commerce clothing brand. And then on campus, I'm involved in a couple of clubs. I'm also a Rotman Commerce student ambassador, so I love talking to students about the program. And in my free time, I'm trying to learn Italian on Duolingo, and I am a part-time figure skating coach. So that's just a little bit of me in a nutshell.
Awesome. Yeah, a lot of stuff, eh?
Yeah.
So, one of the standout things that people might notice about you if they go to your Instagram or whatever, they'll see that in your bio you have check out UofMeg. And then that's like one of the first things when I obviously got your contact later. I saw that on there, right? And I was like, this is the legendary UofMeg I've been hearing about in the Rotman Commerce community.
Oh, thank
And
you.
of course, no, you deserve all the praise. So I just wanted to give kind of like the five W's of what happened with that, right? Like, why did you start it? When did it happen? What is U of Meg? And yeah, if you could
Mhm.
give basic rundown.
For sure. So, as a background, I've always loved designing, sewing my own clothing. Like this has always been a part of me since I was maybe 10 years old. So, huge part of my life. And when I was a figure skater, I used to help design my skating dresses. And like I said, like a bunch of my different passions kind of view of Meg. So, the real kind of clicking point or light bulb moment was when I was walking down St. George Street, which is the main road on U of T campus in my first year. This was September, October 2019. So before COVID, the campus was bustling and lots of activity was going on. And I remember walking down the street thinking to myself, why is everyone wearing the same navy crew neck? And I remember seeing three or four students wearing the exact same crew neck. Why is everyone wearing the same thing? So then in the notes app of my phone, I wrote down rework university merch or something along those lines. Just I knew I wanted to kind of change how U of T was showcasing their merchandise because I felt like a navy crew neck was so bland and not an accurate representation of our student body and how diverse we are. So wrote that down, but then I didn't really think about it until COVID hit because I was in my first year, still trying to figure out school. I really just wanted to make sure I passed first year in general. So
Very
yeah,
relatable.
ramen is tough. So we have to make sure we're getting those grades. So I remember writing my last final exam, April 2020. It was online. And then I had kind of a month to myself because I secured an internship, but it didn't start until June 2020. They kind of pushed the start date back because of COVID. So I was like, okay, I have a month on my hands. What am I going to do? I'm just chilling at home, not really doing anything. I think it'd be a good time to just start my own thing. So I hopped on Instagram, made an Instagram account, and then I purchased my first purchase order of 20 shirts, tied them in my basement, which is still how I run U of Meg. And those sold out within 24 hours. And I was absolutely shocked. I thought those 20 shirts were going to last me an entire month and I would slowly have to sell them, beg my friends to buy them off me, but it ended up being successful and I really enjoyed the experience. So that kind of snowballed and I realized I had something on my hands and I've been growing it ever since. But to kind of sum up what UofMeg is that I take university merchandise that's authentic. So I purchase it from the bookstore or through a thrift store, but I know it's authentic merchandise from the school. And that's done intentionally because I want to make sure that you still have that collegial, very like varsity like aspect when you buy my merchandise, but it just has a UofMeg spin. So it might be tie dyed a certain way, it might be cut and sewn together a different way. And it's just my way of bringing people together. Like when you see a UofMeg shirt or a sweatshirt, you know it's done by me. And I think that's a great way to build community. And I found just another passion when I was in COVID and everyone was at home, lectures were online. So that's kind of how U of Meg is. And I've been running it for over 2.5 years now, and it's been my baby. And I could not imagine my university experience without it.
Awesome. Yeah. I think it's really cool because, you know, I feel like COVID was, I mean, I've talked about, especially on this podcast, talked about COVID to death, but I mean, it's the reason why I started this podcast, right? I mean, you started U of Meg, like, I mean, it's, if we had to look at that silver lining of what actually occurred, I mean, you know, you're always passionate about fashion and design, and you took the opportunity, you saw an opportunity to, and it's such a smart idea as well, because it's not, because when I first saw it, I was like, it's like, how does she get around like licensing and stuff? But I didn't realize that you actually recycle their products as well from the actual schools, which is a great idea, obviously. Sustainable.
Thank you.
Oh, no problem. It's gonna be a lot of complimenting throughout this thing. But yeah, like I thought that was really cool, because also my mother, she's a school teacher, but she was also really into design and fashion throughout her entire life. She sewed her own clothes as a kid. Our family, my mom's side of the family were tailors back in India, so it's like in her blood, I guess.
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
And
Awesome.
like even myself, I would say I got into fashion like in middle school. Yeah, that was really when I was in it. But I mean, I've changed now. I've become a proper university student who can takes a little leisure. I wear sweatshirts and hoodies and stuff to class. But really for me, like menswear was always what I was into, and classic menswear and stuff like that, like, suits and
Some
even
good
like,
tailoring, yeah.
yeah. And it was yeah, it's some aspect that's like an interest of mine that I haven't really thought of in a long time, actually. That's also why you talk to somebody who was also in the sort of industry, and has this sort of interest. But yeah, what do you see for U of Meg in the, I guess, coming years? Is there some sort of idea you have of how you want to expand, or what's your plan for?
Honestly, I have no idea. So, like I said, started this business right after I finished my first year final exams in university. Currently in my fourth year, last semester, so still trying to figure things out, even like what I want to do when I graduate and my 5-year plan when I graduate. I obviously want to continue U of Meg for as long as possible, so we'll see how long that will be. And I don't know, I've just been having fun running it. Like a lot of fun things has happened, and I've collaborated with cool brands and celebrities and influencers. So just trying to continue along that route as well and get as much exposure for the brand as possible. So yeah, very vague, but that's kind of how I'm taking it. Yeah.
I think that's honestly like a good way of going about it, because I feel like the reason why you actually started it and why it was so successful is because you kind of went with the flow, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and I'm gonna relate this back to martial arts, because that's literally why I started this podcast. But it's, I mean, for me, I would say I'm a really overthinker when it comes to things. Like before I purchase something, I over research, or before I even like have a conversation with somebody, I like I research everything behind, and I go too far deep into stuff sometimes, and I try to make some sort of action plan that so nothing goes wrong and everything goes perfectly well. But in martial art, that literally, especially in the context of combat, it's not practical all the time. You should have a plan, but like the famous Mike Tyson quote goes, everyone has a plan till they get punched in the face.
Yeah.
And being able to operate in chaos and in that flow state
Yeah.
is something that's really important in martial art, and it's obviously replicated in real life. um,
Mhm.
I mean, like, I think I probably would have like for the podcast, if I didn't just go with the flow at the end of I think it was August. I actually remember the date, August 29th, 2021. Like, if I didn't just go with the flow and start it, I probably would have researched it, all the process to death. Like, oh, I need to get this mic, I need to do that. Like,
Yeah.
he's like, no, just buy like the $50 mic off Amazon and you have a phone,
Yeah.
right? Like,
There you
just go
go.
about it. Yeah. And it's not like I'm
Yeah.
trying to make money off the podcast, right? This is just for
Yeah.
really, I started it because of the pandemic, right? First
Mhm.
year, when I was in first year, it was completely online. And, that transition from high school to university is always a big one. Um,
Mhm. Mhm.
and, people make a lot of friends in first year. And that's when they meet people like they tend to hang out with and whatever. But, we're online. I'm at home. International students are in their own countries, like operating 12 hours ahead or 12 hours
Mhm.
behind, right? And the only way for us to interact was really, especially for us that were at home, was through group projects and stuff, which are few and far between in our program. We have
Mhm.
maybe
Mhm.
one per course. And what I used to do, I mean, I would try to I'm usually, I used to be very shy as a kid, but in high school, like I switched schools every section, basically elementary, middle, and then high
Mhm.
school. So I had to learn how to make new friends, essentially, like that.
Yeah.
And it
Mhm.
it kind of helped when it came to university, especially online, because everyone was kind of craving interaction, um,
Mhm.
to say to say the least. And essentially, we'd be having our group projects, and then I would just spark a conversation after, and I would start out like, oh, how's this class? I hate this class. Ghazali's really tough marker or whatever, and then it would go from that to what are your aspirations, and then we'd talk about like so many different. It'd be the first time we're actually going into deep conversation, and it'd be the first time we've ever talked, right? And I
Yeah.
thought this is such a valuable experience, and we can have this online. I feel like people would find conversations like this, like we're online right now. Um, and when I first started, it was
Mhm.
all online, and it was so. I always felt so good after having those conversations. It'd be like 4 in the morning, but it felt so fulfilling. And I felt like people would. What I always loved about podcasts is like you're right there, in a conversation with other people, and you don't necessarily have to talk, right? You have to. Most of the time, you
Right.
spend listening in a conversation, and
Mhm.
I think people would find value in that if they came on. And I started out just bringing my friends on, and then eventually I brought um, my instructor on, my Muay Thai instructor, which was a great episode. Got to know him. He's been teaching me since I was like 11 years old.
Aw. Yeah.
And yeah, he's like a mentor to me. And having him on it was nice to get to know him on that level. He was always very personal with us, but it was nice. And then eventually, I expanded to different guests, and like I've had other instructors, musicians, and yeah, and we talk about like so many random things. I Okay, we're back on. Anyway, I was blabbering on about why I started the podcast. um, yeah, you said you were a figure skater, or you still figure skate. When did you start that? Was that like because I skated, like I did power skating back when I was a kid as well,
Mm.
but it was
Mhm.
just for fun. But
Right.
yeah, how about for you? When did you
Yeah, I
start
start
that figure skating journey?
Yeah, I started skating, I think I was around 4 years old, and I just went to the local rink near my house. I could honestly walk there from my childhood house if I wanted to. And I've been skating at that rink since I was 18, since I graduated high school. And throughout that time, I did all different types of skating. I jumped, spins, and I did free skate. And I did ice dance, so I danced with a partner. I loved it, and I rose my way up through the ranks, and I did some competitions. I just loved well, what kept me in the sport, first and foremost, my mom would always tell me this, but I would tell her how much I loved going fast and how much I loved spinning and get feeling dizzy and then doing that all over again. So I think that's what kept me in the sport. Also, the friendships that I've made. I'm still really good friends with some of the skaters I used to train with and obviously the coaches. So I grew up with them since I was 4 years old, and I've stayed at the club ever since. And now that I'm older, and when I turned 16, I took on a coaching role as well. So I now got to work alongside the coaches that also, like you, were my mentors and helped bring me up. And I just love giving back to my local community, seeing other people and other children sharing the same joy skating that I had and just help develop their skills, their confidence, and yeah, love for the sport, which I think is so important, especially nowadays, just to have another outlet and just have fun and really engage in something that's better for your physical and mental health.
Yeah, yeah, that's great. You know, it's something, and you continued it, right? Like since you were so young,
Yeah, exactly. Mhm.
which is good because I mean, when I was young, I was lucky enough to do a lot of things, but I only continue a few things now, right? Um,
Right.
like I don't play
Hmm.
soccer every week like when I was like 3 years old, but yeah. Anyway, yeah, that's good because like especially now at our age, and this is kind of when people are on their grind mindset, especially in their 20s. And then if I talk to my parents, like, they obviously had much less opportunities than I had, but they they didn't really have time to worry about their hobbies and things that actually they liked a lot more than their work. Not to say that my
Hmm.
parents hate their work, but I think our generations have a different mentality when it comes to self actualization, because
Yeah.
I think for me, because I've experienced like a life where I didn't have to struggle for money, um, there's that tipping point. In I mean, psychologists have talked about it, um, where has diminishing returns to your happiness, right? And whatever it is in the States, 80,000 a year. It's probably different here in Canada, but it's probably around maybe even 100K, right? Household income.
Hmm.
Once all your basic needs are met, and you only have your relationships and your hobbies and these other things, then those are the things that would actually contribute to your happiness. And, I was thinking that I feel like one thing that I like about our generation is that we're not forgetting about those things. Like, that's why you always have these people coming back, like the whole midlife crisis. They call it a crisis, but it's really, I feel like just from, I know I'm only 20 years old, but just from my perspective, that it's people who will have worked so hard their entire life to support for their kids, and they're built themselves up to be comfortable and not have to worry about things, that they've neglected aspects of their personality and their personal journey outside of work that really contribute to their happiness, and then they're really reaching back for
Hmm.
that. It's like that the whole thing of the midlife crisis, guys going on trips, like buying fancy cars that they always wanted as a kid, and almost
Hmm.
reliving their childhood. And I feel like, maybe I'm speaking for myself, obviously, but I feel like there's also a way to do that at the same time. You don't have to go 100% one way and lose it and then try to regain it in your older years. Like for myself, like this
Hmm.
podcast, this allows me to keep that sort of my interests alive. Like I'm a musician, I make music, I've released a few songs, and it's like, I'm not trying to become a full-time producer, because it's a very hard gig, but I'll still produce throughout my years, right? Like my parents gave me the opportunity to learn piano, and then I did my own thing. Like why would I let this go to waste, right? And it really contributes to my life, right? Because it feeds the soul, right?
Yeah.
And like martial art, I feel like martial art, music, food, like all these different things, they seem so different, but they're essential to humans. There's a reason why every culture has its own cuisine, its own art, its own martial art, its own music. And these are
Hmm.
things that are common and essential to the human existence. And I think that if I'm able to continue these things, and even in small doses, I think it'll really contribute as I, go forward in my career. I want to go into marketing, so like when I focus more, obviously I'm gonna have less time to do all these things, even less than now. But I just want to go in with that mentality of like having, like trying to keep these things alive while I'm still grinding, right?
Hmm.
Like trying to get money, whatever.
Yeah.
This is like society we live in. I'm not trying to abolish the dollar. Like I understand we got to work to survive. Um, but yeah, I feel like you kind of, maybe just from my outside view, you kind of embody that as well with your like pursuit of UofMeg and these other avenues. And I just hope that you continue that, as you go throughout your career and everything.
Hmm.
I think it's important. So yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Work-life balance is everything. And I think the pandemic was also a huge culture shift in everyone realizing, no, it's okay to log off at 5 o'clock. You don't have to stay on, and you're allowed to have hobbies outside of work and really take that time for yourself. So I'm just glad people are talking about it more, and our generation is definitely spearheading that change.
People, old heads will always talk shit about our generation, but you know there's good and bad in every generation.
Yeah.
And I hate this like sort of not forced, but it's kind of natural division between generations, like Gen X, millennials, baby boomers, whatever, right? It's always the boomers that talk about the millennials, now it's the Gen X's, like our parents talking crap about our generation, right? But even, I mean, I'm guilty of talking crap about my younger cousin's generation or whatever that are on the
Mhm.
iPad all the time. But,
Mm.
you know, I feel like we have so much to learn from each other, um, especially in my. I'm glad I've started to realize this early on. It's like really learning from people with life experience. When you're a teenager, you think you know everything, and then it's that whole thing, right? I think it's the Donnie Kruger effect. There's that point where you know enough to know that you know nothing.
Mm-hmm.
You reach that point, and I feel like I'm at that point in life where I've experienced enough to know something, but I know that I have a lot to learn in life. When it comes to relationships and um, maintaining connections with people and understanding humans on an emotional level, like there's so much to learn, and that's just one aspect of society that we live in. And yeah, I don't know, I'm just trying my best to try to learn more, but I'm gonna realize that I'm stupid. you know like being dumb is part of life.
Yeah.
um
Yeah.
just jumping, sometimes you gotta jump into the fire, like it's like trial by fire, just going in and doing it. Has there ever been something like that with you where you're so hesitant with starting something, and then once you started it, like it was rough in the beginning, but it was really valuable to you? Was there any sort of experience like that for you in your life?
Honestly, I think coming to Rotman Commerce when I was in high school. I never took a business course. I knew I liked business. I knew I liked marketing. I thought business was a good way for me to combine my creativity and analytical brain together and problem solving into one degree. But like I said, never took a business course. I knew I was good at math, good at English and writing, and I liked chemistry and the kind of solving equations and finding new ways of doing processes through chem. So I was like, okay, this could be a way I could combine these aspects of my brain into one degree that could definitely serve me in the future. And I only took an economics course in high school. I was good at it, wasn't my favorite, and then in Rotman Commerce, I definitely realized I was not good at econ. But that's another
Nobody
story
is.
for another time. But yeah, just coming to business school, having no background in accounting or even marketing, and having people surrounding me with that knowledge and background, it was definitely intimidating. I felt out of place throughout my entire first year. But I learned to ask for help. I would go to the Economic Study Center almost every single day in my first year, just asking them to go over problems with me. And yeah, I realized I could chat with upper year students, get their expertise and advice. So even though coming to university and studying something I didn't really know much about and what to expect in my degree, I have had a great experience. I love my profs now, my friends, and the community at Rotman Commerce. Yeah, it was definitely scary. Like, I don't think anyone is prepared for undergraduate school, but you definitely try to make it work and yeah, take it day by day. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I definitely, even though I was
Hmm.
interested in business and like high school, I mean, same experience for me, right?
Yeah.
Like
Hmm.
going into it, because we didn't have econ at our school. So I also really, I
Hmm.
just knew supply and demand. And if it's this way, it's a surplus, or
Right.
this way, it's a deficit. Like
Yeah,
I didn't
that makes
understand
sense.
econ thinking until now in third year. Like it took me, I
Yeah.
mean, like to really understand how to think in an economic mind. Um,
Mm. Yeah.
but that's just life. I used to value attach like grades to my personal worth for so long, and then once I came to university, I was like, this is like the worst. These are like the worst grades I've ever got in my life, in first
Yeah.
year, and
Hmm.
I was like, it's not bad. Like I've faced way worse
Yeah.
than this.
Hmm.
Like at the end of the day, what is it? Does a grade truly reflect your knowledge of something in the context of the real world? Like somewhat, I think it's fair to say, but there's a lot of other factors that influence things, and I don't think that it's an excuse to recognize the influences on somebody's performance. I think it's there are
Mm.
reasons, but they're not an excuse. Like I'm not saying that. Sure, I could have studied more for certain things, right? I could have worked harder on other things, but there are a lot of things going on in that first year, and I don't know. I thought it was. I felt like university really changed my perspective on grades because I used to like really care about them so much.
Hmm.
And then once I came to university, I was like, you know what? It's not really worth it killing yourself over like all this, like over a number. Like I used to
Yeah.
in first year because we had, they changed the format for Econ 101. So it wasn't midterm final because it was online. It was
Mm.
like every 3 weeks we have like a term test. It was so bad.
Mm.
And I just remember every time I get an Outlook email notification, I would get like
Yeah.
like physically stressed out.
Super anxious.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
and I had so many like firsts in terms of stress that because before that I was never like really that stressed about stuff. But then because I was worried, like, bro, am I gonna get into
Yeah.
Rotman Commerce in second year? I'm like, this is really intense. Um, and it's like, man, I'm below the average on certain things, and it's like this is like really because I tried not to look at others and not compare myself, but it's hard, right? When you're in that
Very hard. Yeah.
context, especially when, Rotman is a competitive program. Everyone, if you got in, you're a smart person, right? Like, it's not like
Hmm. Hmm.
it's easy to get into this program. So there's a ton of competition, and that's kind of the nature of the program in itself. Um, but I mean, at the end of the day, I think universities value, like if I talk when I talk to my parents, right? They're like, because they both did post grad, right? My mom did teachers college, and my dad was a lawyer. So my dad is still a lawyer. He went to law school, and they undergrad was just different, right? It wasn't really about really killing it on their grades per se, and really focusing on their
Mm-hmm.
study because they didn't really know, right? They didn't know what they wanted to do
Mm-hmm.
when they're going through. Like my mom didn't know she wanted to do fashion actually, for a
Mm-hmm.
long time. But then our parents are like, we want you to not struggle with stuff, and the classic immigrant parent thing, which is understandable. And she's actually, it's funny enough, we're talking about UofMeg because she's actually taking a year off, this year
Mm.
to pursue, fashion.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah,
That's so cool.
yeah, it's
Mm-hmm.
funny. We've had a lot. It's like been years of conversations about it, and the funny part is because my mom is super, like creative oriented brain, and then there's me and my dad
Mm-hmm.
who are, like, I would say I'm creative as well, but there's also like I'm in a business program. Like I have a business mind when it comes to a business,
Very
right?
analytical.
I'm like,
Yeah,
mom, we have
yeah.
to make some sort of business plan, like to understand how it's gonna work. And she's like, oh yeah, sure. But then she's like, I got the patterns. I already got my guy con. It's like, wait, can we like
Mm.
design like what's the name of your company first? It took us so long, and we just ended up
Yeah.
like she just ended up going with her name, first name.
Mm.
But yeah, and now we're trying to work with her on our marketing stuff and just getting. But I'm
Awesome.
obviously rooting for her because she's always wanted to do this. She's
Yeah,
always
same.
been interested in that, and like it's been part of her
Mm.
life.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
she's already
I love
sacrificed
that.
30 years of her life for us. So I'd I think it's time for her to pursue what she really wants to do as well. Like I mean, she loved teaching
Mm.
too. Like
Mm-hmm.
I've been to her class. She's a kindergarten teacher, right? So
Mm.
I would help her out every once in a while, and she loved her job. But
Yeah.
this is her passion, right? Her passion project that she's trying to actualize.
Mm-hmm.
And
That's amazing. That's such a great story. Yeah.
yeah, which I really, I feel like when we're kids, or at least for me, and I'll speak for myself, I'm not going to generalize for everyone, but like you don't appreciate what your parents do as much. And then it's always
Yeah.
like same old story when, your parents pass away and they're like, you never appreciated them enough. Like, didn't spend
Mm-hmm.
enough time with them. You didn't tell them, thank you for working so hard. And it's like, I'm thankful I realized that early enough where, we have our fights, right? We have our disagreements, but like I gotta realize my parents are trying their best, right? It's not like their
Mm-hmm.
parents,
Yeah.
my grandparents were the most understanding with stuff. They love them, but it's not like they said that to them. They showed them they love them by working 15 hours, and
Mm-hmm.
then yeah, it's I think I've become more mature in that aspect, I can say, and I think it's healthy to recognize that,
Mm-hmm.
because I don't know. I think there's a lot of things that we realize too late in life. Sorry to get so deep at 10 in the morning, but there's a lot of things you don't realize till later in life. And we always have these regrets of like, oh, I wish I did this earlier, and then all this. But then for me, I had a turning point in my life, like when I was in high school. There was a certain something happened, and then I was like, like no regrets kind of lifestyle. It's kind of bit me in the ass a few times, but and my dad's like gives me crap for it for in certain cases, but honestly, I'll be much happier like when I do this sort of when I act this way. Like I've been noticeably happier in what I do,
Mm-hmm.
and because I don't dwell on failures, I try to learn from them. Like I used to really think about stuff and regret, like horribly regret my decisions, even though they didn't really matter at all,
Mm-hmm.
like in retrospect.
Mm-hmm.
But things
Yeah.
matter, you know, And in hindsight, everything is, hindsight is 2020, right? Like you can only realize something didn't really mean that much until you've been through it. It's like
Yeah,
all the problems
for
you
sure.
have as a 4-year old are not really that big problems when you're a
Yeah.
15-year-old, and so on and so forth.
Yeah,
Um,
exactly. Yeah.
and after that, I don't know. I felt like I just been more like a lot happier, like especially at being a shy person my entire life. And then I was kind of like, why don't I just like reach out to people, like just talk to other people, meet new people, especially in university where it's a completely different crowd. There's like, you know,
Hmm.
60,000 people that go to U of T downtown campus alone or whatever. It's like crazy. Um, and just taking chances on things. Like I was a proper goody two shoes in my entire life, basically. So um, anything that would go outside, like my parents weren't really, they were strict in the sense that they had these values for me, and they weren't like beating me or anything, like I got slapped a few times when I was a kid, but I totally deserved it every time. But it was like they gave me, it was more about the disappointment of my parents. That
Mm.
was what I was afraid of. And
Hmm.
like the worst, I can get yelled at my parents all day long. I can take shit from anyone, but like if I hear stuff from my parents that are like it didn't make them proud, then it's like that's when it really is like, man, I messed up, you know.
Mm.
And then
Yeah,
once you break the trust, then it's so hard to get it back, especially
it
with
is.
anyone.
Yeah. Hmm.
But then I realized, like, is that any way to live life when you're just afraid of what could happen for every single scenario? You know, like in if you don't take chances, especially like for like in martial art, like when you're sparring, like if you don't take chances, you'll never grow. You will never
Mm.
advance your technique. You'll stay the same. Still be getting hit by the same thing because you can't predict, especially when it's a striking sport.
Hmm.
It's so fast. Like literally, there's a reason why they say there's a thing called a puncher's chance. Even somebody with zero skill can knock you out just off of chance. I mean, it's very unlikely if you're trained, but you never know. And then life is a good. I feel like I use martial arts and combat as a way to understand life, because what is a more simple interaction between two human beings than an altercation, right? There are no words. It's just your fists, your shins, your knees, your elbows, right? Like it's just that. There's literally no other complications. Like you don't worry about the legal repercussions till after, right? Like when you're there, and that, like obviously I'm talking, this is like a different in the street context, right? There's a lot of factors that come into play. But like if you're in a sparring, right? Or you're in a fight in a ring, like you're only thinking about that. There's nothing else. I'm not
Mm.
worrying about my school problems or my friends or my family. Like I'm just focused on not getting hit, and wow, that hurts, and like stuff like that. And sometimes when life gets so complicated, I try to compare it to that scenario of interacting in that context, because it simplifies things so much, and it allows me to view things in a almost kind of objective way, without emotion, because emotions in especially in most high stress scenarios, and combat is like, it's up there in terms of high stress scenarios that you can go through. Like emotions are not always, most of the time, your enemy, and
Mm.
making decisions based on emotions will get you knocked out, will get you hurt, and a lot of times, you know, mess you up. You make emotion driven decisions, and then you become unhappy, or all these different things can happen. So I try to use that as a way to view life. I don't know, dude, this always gets so deep. I don't know, man. Every podcast, like I'd start out about some sort of lighthearted topic, and then I end up talking about like, oh, martial arts, anyway. Is there anything like that for you where whenever things are really complicated, there's something that helps you like come down to earth, essentially, like detach from your emotions in that situation and actually view it from a different perspective. Is there anything that you do to help you achieve that?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think, well, when I was figure skating and competing, definitely just getting on the ice and skating for myself was a huge outlet. I used to skate like multiple times a week for many hours, and I would even skate before school and then go to school, then come back to the rink afterwards. So I would love skating in the morning when it was quiet. I would get there early, so I was on the ice before 7 a.m. and I would have that ice to myself. And it was always good ice too because no one was there, and they
Yeah.
did the flood the night before, so it wasn't watery. It was very crisp. Like if you're a skater or a hockey player, you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, I do
um,
understand a bit.
yeah, so definitely like that environment was definitely like my safe space. I also, like you, love listening to music and just kind of zoning out in my own world with music, um, or having like a little dance party. So, in conjunction with my figure skating training, I used to dance a lot. So,
Hmm.
just moving my body, staying active was really, really good for me. When I was super anxious and stressed out in high school, I used to meditate. So, that'd be something else I would do to calm my nerves. And I learned to meditate from one of my figure skating coaches. And then I kind of brought that in whenever I was stressed out about academics. I would try to take some time, even just 2, 5 minutes, just to focus on my breathing and do like a mental body scan or listen to like my Calm app or yeah, and just try to like focus on my mental well-being like that. One thing that I started to do during COVID was journaling, because I felt like I had a lot of thoughts in my head, and it helped if I put them out on paper and would jot them out. So I think that was another tactic I would use. But yeah, I think it's kind of trial and error. You need to figure out what works best for you, and you can take your passions and interests, which I think is something that we've learned along the way, and channel those into bettering your own well-being and health.
Yeah, yeah, I can totally relate with that. Getting on the ice, or for me, it was hitting the bag.
Mm,
Like, no music, literally, like, phone is inside. All I have is my water bottle, and it's just me in the bag.
yeah.
And it's almost like a form of, I'm gonna borrow a term from my instructor, Krunik. He there Not all forms of meditation have to be stationary.
Mm,
Active meditation can come in the form of many different things, right? For me, it was hitting the bag, shadow boxing, I mean, for yourself, figure skating, dancing, all these
mhm.
sorts of things. Meditation doesn't have to come, because I feel like a lot of people here, like the ways people go about improving their mental health and well-being and managing stress, everyone knows kind of what to do. Like it's like
Right.
getting in shape,
Yeah.
working out. Like everyone knows. Like you go to the gym, you eat well. Like that's everyone knows that's how you do
Yeah.
it. But you know, it's just about doing it and making it work for you.
Yeah.
And I feel like finding that outlet of relieving stress, that's healthy,
Hmm.
um, is so important for just going dealing with the daily things that are going on, and how to
For sure.
effectively manage your stress,
Yeah.
because even like I've been in very high stress scenarios. Like I think one of the highest stress scenarios you can be in is like a physical altercation, right, with somebody bigger than you. Like I'm always a smaller guy in martial arts in a combat scenario on average, and it's always like my whole style was developed around survival. It was, I'm on the outside, I have to be tricky, like I gotta have good timing. I literally have to be the better fighter in every way to succeed, because size does matter in fights, especially in striking. um, Grappling is a different story, right? Sometimes being the smaller person can benefit you, but also, you know being fully mounted by a person who is 100 pounds heavier than you sucks ass. So there's
Mm.
also that too. But like that was, it used to be such a high, like sparring used to be so intense in terms of like we wouldn't always be hitting each other super hard because that's not good for longevity. Like I'm trying to keep my brain cells, right? But
Mhm.
like I used to be, it would be so mentally taxing. It's like, when people say they have like a really intense workout or they write a long
Mm.
test and you leave and you're like, wow, I didn't do anything, even if it wasn't anything physical, but I feel so tired right now. Like I'm so
Mhm.
drained mentally. I remember after some intense sparring, like the adrenaline used to be so high, I couldn't even make a sentence. Like we'd be talking after, and I'd be like, yeah, and then I would just be mumbling my words, and that the adrenaline dump from such that high stress
Mm.
scenario was insane. And the funny
Mhm.
part is, like, the adrenaline is such a true thing because you don't feel the pain till after. Like, I remember one time I was sparring, and um, we have shin pads on and we're geared up to be safe, right? We're not trying to cut anyone. But I caught an elbow on my toe, like somebody was blocking a kick, and I hit their elbow, and then like it hurt
Mm.
in that moment. But then you have such high adrenaline when you're sparring at a high intensity that you don't feel it. But I just kept on rolling it, like everything. It just went horrible, and by the end, like I didn't feel anything. The next day, my toe was like purple. It was so bad.
Oh
It was
no.
it was so bad, but thankfully that was like that was the only bad injury I've had from sparring.
That's good.
But yeah, it's just those kind of scenarios, like they really help you deal with stress, I find, because you realize that things are not as intense as something else you've experienced, right?
Mhm.
It's like building up your tolerance to stress is like building up your tolerance to spice, right? Like the more spicy food you eat, the less spicy the average thing is gonna taste.
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
more controlled stress that you undergo, the less stressful the average scenario is going to be.
Mhm.
It's about controlled stress too, because that's a safe environment. Sparring, right? I'm there, supervised by a coach, with people who are my training partners, my friends. It's a safe scenario. Like for example, like competition, for you when you're a child, like it's like you're not doing it in some context where there's real consequences that can actually really impact your life, right? Like it's not super beneficial to be risking your life doing certain things all the time, or risking your well-being in terms of financial well-being, like gambling or whatever. Like these are high stress scenarios, but they're not necessarily controlled or beneficial to your well-being. um Yeah, I just wanted to. I'll just change up the topic a bit, from this, you know, little intense. Um, I wanted to ask you, as somebody who is interested in design and fashion, what are some of your favorite aspects of fashion that you um, enjoy? Do you feel like it gives you more confidence, or helps you present yourself in a way that you want to be perceived, or what's your perspective on that, on fashion itself?
Yeah, definitely around confidence, self-expression. Definitely, you hit the nail on the head for that. Even when I was little, when I was like 5 or 6 years old, like going to kindergarten, first grade, like I always loved putting together outfits. I felt like it was a way for me to express myself. I definitely resonate with what you said about being a shy kid, and I was always very unsure of my words and how I was speaking. So I think fashion allowed me to do that without necessarily using my voice. But obviously, over the years, I've been able to kind of talk about what I wear and how I present myself as well. So I think through fashion, I've been able to build that confidence. Um, I also just love color theory and art and culture, and I love being able to once again express that through my clothing. So yeah, I think fashion is just such an essential part of who we are, and I just love
Mm-hmm.
that everyone has their own unique take, and you don't need to be an expert or have like an amazing style sense. Like everyone can get into fashion, and it's so accessible to a certain point. You can hop on Instagram or TikTok, get content through there. Like you don't need to pay a dime. um, so yeah, I think it's just such a part of who we are, and I love being able to share that with people and make it accessible.
Cool. Yeah. What are some of your personal favorite, I guess, trends in fashion? Or how about this?
Mm.
Well, we'll get to that later. What are your personal favorite eras, I guess, for fashion in terms of like whatever
Oh,
the last century or decade or whatever, like is there
mhm.
any specific time that you like
Interesting.
are inspired by?
I haven't been asked this question in a while. But definitely recently, like I love Paris Hilton and the early 2000s, like a super crop tank top and like low-rise jeans I've been slowly
Hmm.
getting into as well. I don't know if I would necessarily wear them, but I love seeing them on other people.
Yeah, yeah.
And like I love wearing Uggs. I'm wearing Uggs right now. And I think just that era of not really caring what you're about other people and just wearing what you want to wear is so quintessentially me. Like I love wearing whatever I want to wear to school. And I do this thing on my personal Instagram where I take a photo of what I wear every single day to school. And I call it like my fit check or like outfit of the day. And
Hmm.
I love documenting that process as well. So I think that's very reminiscent of like the early 2000s and just you really using fashion as self-expression and using color and texture and random kind of mixing and matching in
Hmm.
early 2000s. So I really resonate with that. Um, also really love like the 60s and 70s also for the use of color. I love like flare jeans, which are very reminiscent of the 70s. Also the use of accessories like scarves and sunglasses. So I think those are my top two eras right now. But also very excited to see where fashion goes in the future and how people are incorporating tech, artificial intelligence, even the metaverse into fashion. So just kind of hanging on and seeing what happens with that as well.
Yeah, that's cool. I would say, like for me, if I had to choose, in terms of menswear, I'm more of like a 30s kind of guy.
Mm,
Like that's
hmm.
really like what I mean, I can't really afford 1,000 pinstripe suits, but I've got one,
Love a good
but
pinstripe. Yeah,
nice,
yeah.
nice pinstripe suit,
Hmm.
high cut, tailored pants.
Hmm.
Bro, I used to wear fedoras all the time. It was so
Oh,
fun.
really?
Yeah, all the time. In middle
I love
school,
that.
I
Yeah,
didn't care.
yeah.
But they weren't like milady fedoras. They were like nice fedoras.
Right.
At least I had the distinction.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Love it. Hmm.
Yeah, because I really loved that whole aesthetic of that era.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
then in also like 50s, 60s,
Hmm.
like I love greaser stuff, like leather jackets,
For
white
sure.
tee, denim,
Yeah.
boots.
Hmm.
It's also really approachable for me because I mean, it's just a t-shirt and jeans and then you have a
Hmm.
jacket, right? Like James
Hmm.
Dean, Marlon Brando, like Rebel Without a Cause, like all those classic films that I used to watch,
Hmm.
like their whole style was something I really liked. That's basically like how I go about things now. Like I usually
Right.
dress like that. But yeah, also like 60s, like there's a certain era. It's kind of 60s. It's not really 70s. Like mid to late 60s, like basically like whatever James Brown was wearing from 65 to 68, like that
Hmm.
that era is something I really like as well.
Hmm.
Like skinny ties and tailored pants. Like I can't do the baggy pants thing, man. I know it's in trend right now, but my legs are too skinny for that, and I can't. It doesn't work for me. But yeah, yeah. You were talking about how AI and the metaverse are being implemented in fashion. What do you mean by that? I was interested because I was like, whoa, metaverse clothing. You know, what do you?
Yeah.
What's going on with that?
So everyone maybe I'll give a little background of like advertising and fashion for those who aren't too familiar. But obviously, when people were starting to use fashion as a way of like more than just clothes that you wear, like as an actual, I don't know how to describe it, but just like an actual like purchase. Like people are intentionally spending money on items of clothing to make themselves feel better or whatever, like people would use billboard advertising, magazines, or print advertising. That was traditional advertising in early 1900s to probably even like the 80s to the 90s, people were still using billboards. And then when the internet and people started to get personal computers, we started to shift into this digital era, which then kind of migrated into social media advertising when people started getting mobile phones. So that kind of takes us to the 2000s into the 2010s. And like, I think we're all very familiar with advertising on Instagram, TikTok, even the rise of influencers. So that brings us to 2020, 2022. Now, the metaverse, for those who aren't familiar, it's basically like Sims or like a digital space where you can interact with people, have avatars, you can shop in the metaverse, you can do different things in this online space. And fashion brands have been able to capitalize on that, where you, as an avatar, you can buy clothing from digital clothing from a clothing brand like Gucci or Prada, and you can put it on your avatar. And that's another way fashion brands have been able to put themselves in front of a consumer or even a new consumer, people who are super interested in tech, and allow them to show their personality, self-expression, and just get that brand recognition in another space. So yeah, it's kind of interesting how we've migrated from physical to digital now to hyper digital. I don't even know how to describe the
Mm-hmm.
metaverse. But that's basically how advertising and fashion is moving forward. For UofMeg, I haven't really dived into this space yet, but definitely keeping my tabs on it and listening to podcasts and reading like McKinsey reports, for example, on these trends and seeing where they go. Um, so yeah, I'm excited about that. And then more a little bit about AI is like when you log onto a website, they'll prompt you with, oh, do you want to allow us to track you with cookies, or um, like even when you go into a Shopify site, the Shopify owner will get data on where you clicked from before. Like let's say you found an Instagram ad and then you were directed to their website, like they would know you came from Instagram. So just little things like that can help shape fashion brands, and not only like the business side, but also like the creative side and how they're advertising, and then also the products that they're selling. So that's my little rant on the metaverse and AI, but hopefully that resonates or makes sense to people.
Yeah, yeah. Because I thank you for clarifying, because I was like, when I heard that, I was like, oh, how does that apply? But then, now that
Yeah.
you explained, it makes sense.
Yeah. And it's really
Uh,
interesting too. Yeah.
yeah, it's super interesting, especially as somebody, we're both going into this field of marketing,
Hmm.
and it's like
Yeah.
there's so many different things, like especially digital marketing. Traditional marketing isn't
Hmm.
dead, but I mean, like
Right.
it's changed so much. Like
Hmm.
I don't promote this podcast on a fucking newspaper, but I
Yeah.
do it. I'm on Instagram, and I have a website. Like it's allowed. Honestly, it's allowed for so many people to have access to marketing means and ways to
Hmm.
connect with their audience. Because honestly, what I think is most important, depending on your brand image and your brand philosophy, like audience connection, like if you really care about a brand and the brand actually cares about their customer, that's like something I want to embody.
Right.
Um, like obviously there's companies like this Walmart and all these that are trying to provide the cheapest product most efficiently, and they're not trying to
Hmm.
make like the best connections with their customers. So I understand, right? Like that's how it works for certain companies, but I want to be different in that way. Like if I work for a company, like I've been applying to internships for the last 2 years, and it's like the companies I really like to or would wish to have an internship at, they provide this sort of environment of actually really caring about their customer. And I feel like in
Hmm.
marketing, like you have some of the most opportunity in terms of a business sense to do that with your audience, as well as a client that you're working for, um, or even just people within your own company or organization. And I feel like nowadays we have so many opportunities to do that, like with Instagram and YouTube. Like I upload this on YouTube, and I have Spotify. Like there's so many different ways to connect with people. And we've talked about this before. We talked about social media with one of my high school friends on here about like the good and bad. Um, we did a little bit of a deep dive into Twitch and well, I have my own opinions about Twitch. I'm not really the biggest fan of Twitch, but it's another tool for people. But personally, it's not really my thing. I can't watch a stream for 12 hours. So,
Me neither.
yeah, yeah. Like
Yeah.
maybe if some guy posts clips on YouTube, I'll watch it. But no, ain't no way I'm watching 12-hour stream of this guy sitting in his chair. But alas, they're making hella money, so they can do whatever they want, right? But um,
Mhm.
yeah, yeah. I think it's so cool, honestly. Like especially with the analytics thing. It's so easy to get market research and market information. Like I have my Wix site. I know where people are clicking from, and like I can get so much info. Obviously, there's a whole invasion of privacy thing, but I think at a certain level, it's really beneficial for both sides. Um, and like with Instagram, like without that, nobody would have listened to this podcast, like without the advent of the internet and to get stuff distributed to these platforms without having a distributor that does it for free. Like I use Anchor, like Anchor. I'll give them a plug right now if anyone makes it to this point of the video, but like Anchor is literally like for free. I've uploaded to Spotify, Apple Podcasts, every podcasting platform. And then I record the video, upload it to YouTube by myself. But like it's for free. They offer you sponsorships and stuff like that. Like eventually, once you reach a certain amount of viewers,
Mm.
and like I'm not trying to. Podcasting is not about the money, right? It's not a field where it's super lucrative and you can make quick money and quick cash like YouTube was when it first started. Um, like what I'm trying to do with the podcast, maybe eventually I'll offer paid content. Eventually, we'll see where it goes with that. If I'm able, because I'm not just trying to make money off this thing by offering some BS content. I'm just making extra for people, right? Unreleased episodes or whatever. I want it to be worth their time to come on the episode and pay whatever the $5 a month to actually view this quality product. And
Mhm.
yeah, but I think it's super cool now. I think we're in a really interesting time where we can people in our field can utilize technology to our benefit and to our consumers' benefit and customers' benefit. So yeah, I thought that was super cool. Um, yeah, so I wanted to maybe we could break away just from this for now. Like as somebody who's in fourth year, um, you know,
Mhm.
pursuing something after university, whatever it may be. Um, what was your experience like throughout university? Obviously, you don't have to go into too much detail, but um, from what because for me the transition was very jarring. Was very jarring in first year, especially coming
Yeah.
online. What was that
Yeah.
like for you? Yeah, yeah. Go ahead.
Just like, oh, okay.
Just in general,
Um,
yeah.
yeah. I, like I said, really enjoyed my time at Rotman Commerce. Definitely roller coaster, lots of ups, but equally as many downs. I really liked first year. I had the opportunity of being in person up until March, so I could meet a lot of people in my classes, have FaceTime with my props one-on-ones, and really get that support that I needed. And I found Rotman Commerce in general to be very welcoming. I was really scared that people would be cutthroat and no one would want to help you, and people were trying to backstab you and
Yeah.
yada yada yada. But I had the complete opposite experience, and that's why I love being a Rotman Commerce ambassador because I can share that don't trust Reddit, don't read that at all. Like a lot of my friends, my best friends are in the program with me and we've been friends since the first day of first year. So I think that really speaks volumes of how supportive and inclusive I felt in my experience. So I thought first year was great and I really tried to chat with upper year students and really get their expertise and just navigate my way through the trials and tribulations of first year. And then at the end of first year, COVID hit, and then we were online for all of second year. I actually had the opportunity to have a little bit of an in person class in second year where there were like 13 students in class and we were in the Rotman MBA building and then the rest of the class was online which was such a weird experience but it, and my prof was great, and his name was Luciano, and he's still one of my biggest supporters of UofMeg and mentors till this day. And he runs his own business and obviously teaches at Rotman. So getting his advice throughout the years has been so invaluable, and I still chat with him and look out for him when I'm at school, and we have chats every now and then. So second year, although it was tough, like I had that really great experience, really struggled with econ in my second year, but one of the plus sides was that I met a lot of new people, and either through like my econ tutorials or other RSM classes, I made a lot of great friends. And even though we were on Zoom, like we would still try to have study dates online, or
Hmm.
just really text each other and get each other's input for different studying or midterm prep. So yeah, kind of transitioned out of the online space into fully in person again for my third year, which I absolutely adored. I I think I had some of my favorite profs in third year, and like Scott Hawkins or Karine Benzakar. Like I love these profs so much, and I really credit them to just building my passion for business. And um, I think in first year, you have a lot of imposter syndrome of asking yourself, oh, am I really meant for this program? Should I really be studying this? But in third year, that really solidified like, okay, I'm meant to be a business student. Like, I have what it takes, and I am going to be successful. So I think that was a great reaffirming year. I also took a lot of marketing courses, like consumer behavior or branding strategy, and those I love to death. Like, I wish I could just take those courses over and over
Yeah.
again. Just because I had so much fun learning them. And I also felt like they were really great pillars to success when it came to internships or looking for full-time jobs, which I've been able to secure. So yeah, really loved third year. And I also loved like the resurgence of being back on campus. I would like go to the gym more, be with my friends, and we would grab coffee. So love that experience. There were definitely some tough points too. Like I really struggled in third year econ classes again. Like I said, econ's not my strong suit, but yeah, I just tried to once again like ask for help and really just make sure I was doing the best I could. And I think another theme that we chatted about was grades don't define you. And I've been really trying to learn that and deal with the shame of getting a bad mark, but then kind of bouncing back from that. And then now I'm in my fourth year and in my last semester, and fourth year has definitely been great. I think I really struggled in September and October just because I was looking for doing grad school applications, also looking for full-time jobs. So a lot happening outside of schoolwork. So it was hard time between school and finding out what to do in the future. So if I could give any advice to future fourth year students, it's just trust the process. Everything has to happen for a reason, and you don't have to get a job on your first day in fourth year. Like you can take your time, you can still explore. Even when you graduate in June, like you don't have to have a job lined up. Like it's okay. Um, and I'm trying to had my friends through that. Um, yeah, and it's tough. You see people around you already signing with jobs in July before they even start in fourth year. So yeah, just kind of navigating that and dealing with comparison. But overall, like I have friends at Rotman Commerce, and I think fourth year I really to find a core group of friends that I could always rely on, or I know I can always text them and they'd reply, and or we'd go out and we would have a lot of fun. So finding that solid in fourth year kind of encapsulates encapsulates my undergrad. But one other thing I wanted to mention was I was supposed to exchange in my third year winter, and I was really looking forward to it. I have always dreamed about studying abroad, and I was supposed to study in Milan, which is obviously one of the fashion capitals of
Hmm.
the world. I was excited to take luxury business classes there, fashion management, really things that were up my alley and courses that weren't offered at Rotman Commerce. But unfortunately, Omicron happened and I wasn't able to go. So hopefully I'll be in Milan one day. But yeah, I definitely recommend going on exchange if you're still trying to plan out your undergrad. And yeah, even if it's for a summer abroad or a whole semester, definitely try to fit that in your schedule if you can.
Yeah, that's I appreciate you sharing your perspective on that. I'm only a year younger, but like it's I think it's very valuable for I'm sure there's first years and people in high school listening to this. Like,
Mhm.
it's pretty scary coming to university. Like if you've, I mean, nobody, there's so many things that you do in life that you have a perspective on how it's going to feel, but you realize once you get there that you actually had no idea how this is actually going to be, which was university
Yeah,
for I think most people. And I think it just helps to hear these sort of these words of encouragement from people who have already gone through it or in their
for sure.
last few months of university. And yeah, I think that's gonna wrap up our episode today. Yeah, I don't want to take up too much of your time in the morning.
Awesome.
We're all busy, especially you being in fourth year. Um, so yeah, anything else to plug for the end of the episode? We have UofMeg and all that.
Yeah, if anyone wants to reach out to me, I always say my DMs are open, even if it's not UofMeg related, but you want to chat about school or other things about work or marketing, you can definitely reach me at UofMeg on Instagram or TikTok. If you want to check out my merchandise, you can check out uofmeg.com. I also have a contact page on my website, so if you want to email me and leave your email with me, you can definitely do that through my contact page. And then if you want to check out my LinkedIn, which was also, I think, mentioned, or we've definitely chatted about Sachin, you can definitely find my LinkedIn. Maybe I'll send it to you and you can put that in the show notes.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
but yeah, I just wish everyone the best and thanks for listening.
Awesome. All right. Thank you for coming on, Megan. Thank you guys for listening once again. We're gonna have this year is gonna be different. I'm gonna make an announcement right now that I'm gonna commit to being more consistent with my uploads. Like I know I used to upload in the beginning every week, which was really dumb because it was too much work and I couldn't find guests and we couldn't. Yeah, it was such a pain in the ass. But now I have an actual schedule. I'm gonna get it back to every other week, guys, and I'm gonna try to bring the blogs back, practice my writing, and you guys can see my improvement throughout the years. But yeah, thank you guys once again for listening. Check us out on Spotify, YouTube. Give us a like, save us to your playlist, download the podcast. Check out our Instagram at the.way podcast. Check out our website if you want to read my blogs. And yeah, thank you guys for listening once again, and we'll see you next week.